What's up, everybody? This is episode 19, and my name is Chris, and this is my Bloodborne playthrough, where we talk about lore, and there's a big burning house going on. I pretty much beat the game. I can go right now in this shit and call it Dunskies. However, I believe there's some lot, I was gonna say there's some lot, but that doesn't make sense. That's not good English, Chris. There's a lot more stuff to look at, and one of them's right here, Cainhurst summons. An old blood-stained summons, inviting an honored guest to the Forsaken Castle, Cainhurst. Rather bafflingly, it is addressed to you. Do not hesitate. The stagecoach leaves from Hemwick Crossing. Interesting. So you get this item actually back if you find the secret way into Yosefka's secret little hideout. If you can find the back entrance to it and get up in there, you find that laying down where you started out the game. Now, when you start the game, that item is not there. Whether you could say, oh, maybe, they didn't want it to be there, or you could say that, I don't know. Like, it's just weird that it's not there at the beginning and it is there when you visit. It's definitely something either Yosefka forgot to give you or was supposed to give you, or maybe the fake one brings it. Like, there isn't much to go by on how it ends up where it's at, but that is where it's at. But to talk about it a little bit, it's an old and blood-stained, right? So this invitation is very old. It's not something new. So either it was written a long time ago before you showed up and it knew of you coming, or maybe you're very old, or it was made and time has passed for a very long time. Who knows how long you're laying there? I mean, you don't know, right? It's just saying that it's old, though. And that is blood-stained. So where did the blood come from? What is it? Your blood? Is it from when you were getting your blood administered at the beginning of the game? Where did the blood come from? Because you find a Cainhurst summons later, but that one doesn't have any blood, or it doesn't say there's any blood on it. Doesn't necessarily mean there isn't blood on it, but it doesn't say it. It doesn't say in the description, which I figured it'd probably say. It's just very weird that this thing is old and blood-stained, right? So again, it's showing passage of time or something, but then it's inviting an honored guest, and that's you, right? And that's what's really weird about it. If it was someone else's, if it just said it was an invitation and it was just laying there, yeah, you just picked up someone else's invitation. That could be easily seen as that way. But for some reason, it's meant for you and your character. Now, remember, when you start this game out, you don't really know, you don't remember who you are, or it seems as though you don't. All you have is this thing that you hear about, pale blood, at the beginning, and you have to seek it out. It's written on a note right at the beginning, and your character kind of questions it, and the first person he really questions is Gilbert about what it is, and Gilbert has no idea. But the whole point is that you don't really know who you are, where you come from. However, you have this summons, apparently. And a summoning is more or less likely that they want you to come here. So to get there, once you get this thing, all you have to do is go to this pillar right here, and then it takes you right over there, and a big cutscene happens. It's just very strange that it's written to you, right? Maybe this side story, and FromSoft likes to put their side stories, and they like the side story won't tell you everything about the lore, right? It's not going to add a huge abundance amount of information, but it does add to it, and it helps figure out little pieces of the puzzle that might be missing. And if you think about like Dark Souls 1, the Painted World, you have Priscilla, who is like a manufacturing of like what's his face? That big white dragon, or not white dragon, but pale dragon, or God, why can't I remember his name? Anyways, him and of maybe human, like a mixture, right? And it kind of explains a little bit about what he was doing or what he was trying to do. It gives a little more information in that, but it doesn't like tell you the whole story about what Dark Souls 1 is about. It gives you kind of pieces to kind of understand exactly what's going on in the world. So as the way this looks so far, it's maybe helping you try to figure out who you are, or why what your original purpose may have been to travel over here, and not necessarily just to get healed. Maybe you're getting healed for a specific reason, and we'll kind of talk about that as we go. But we're not 100% sure. There's no true answer. So as you notice when you're traveling to Cainhurst, this is very, very. If you've ever read Bram Stoker's Dracula, if you ever read that book, I had to read it for literature class in college. However, was it in college? Yeah, I think it was college. Yeah, I think it was college. We had to read it for that. and it's a very good book. If you haven't read the original Dracula book, definitely pick it up, read it. I don't know, Cliff Notes it if you don't like reading, but whatever. It's a very, very good book, and this reminded me of that so much. Like almost not to a T, but it had a lot of the same kind of symbology and all that other great word. I don't even think symbology is a word. Like it had all the same stuff there. So if you've ever read Dracula, there's a guy named Dr. Harker, and he's the guy that's kind of the main character at the beginning, and then you get Helsing, I think, a little bit later. But he goes to this village, and they're like, it's St. George's Day, right? There's evil things. This is when the evil things have its way. The villagers all start whispering words that he starts thinking. He starts translating these words to werewolf and vampire, and then they all kind of make a gesture towards Harker, and it's a cross, right? And that's kind of where you get that idea that a cross kind of stops vampires. But they give him this cross, and then I believe someone on the stagecoach with him says that that's a symbol to ward off the evil eye, which is really weird. Talking about eyeballs again here. So, you know, there's all these similar things, and the way I look at it, you know, is that, and then the way I look at it is he's getting on this. Your character is getting on this stagecoach to this strange place, and that's kind of what Harker is doing. Your stagecoach guy that's supposed to be driving it doesn't even exist, but Harker one does exist in his book, but however he seems to be ghost-like, because there's one point where he thinks he can actually see through him, but he's not 100% sure if he's just thinking that or whatnot. It's a very creepy beginning to a book. It's very interesting the way they do it, but then the book also references vampires and werewolves. This game has werewolves. I believe Cainhurst is an idea of vampires in this game, which is strange because now we have werewolf, we have vampires, we have elder gods, we have witches, you know, we have all these different like fantasy evil type of monsters, and we even get into later like the cosmos and things like that beyond otherworldly monsters. So this game really takes like every monster from the Monster Handbook and kind of throws it in here, and it's very cool when you start thinking about it. Now, the reason why I think these guys are vampires is, if you remember about the Vile Bloods, and as you kind of go through this, you'll see that there's some item descriptions that kind of mean it. But the first enemy you see right here, they look like they're just sucking up blood, like, and they're holding it inside them. They look like big ticks. They remind me of ticks, actually. I don't know if there's like grasshoppers and ticks. I don't know. They have all that blood, and when you kill them, the blood just splutters everywhere. It splatters all over the place. It's pretty cool, but like, yeah, it's very vampiric to me, and it's not werewolf like. It's very vampirism. So now you got a story with werewolves, like I said. Now you got a story with vampires. It's getting crazy up in the Yarnum area, because you're kind of not actually in Yarnum when you're in Cainhurst, and we'll see that again too later. But it's cool to see kind of like this analogy towards a great literature, and I just kind of wanted to throw that in there. And then, like I said, there's other parts of there's a lot of stuff from here that you can take from Lovecraft and things like that I haven't really delved into, but that's because there's a lot to talk about. If you just want, like, there could be like a 7, you could do like a whole semester on how this game and Lovecraft like match, you know, very, very well. But it's just cool to see something else too in there other than just Lovecraft. So definitely check out Dracula if you haven't. That's my sounds like I'm like plugging it in there. It's an old book, but it's a very good book if you have never read it. So when we get here, we're at Cainhurst. Now, I die like 3 times right off the bat by these things. I don't know what was wrong with me. I don't know what was going on. After I died, these, like, literally right here, right in this spot, I died 3 times. This is the second one, I think. I died one more time, maybe 4. And then after that, I don't die again. The whole episode. I don't know what was wrong with me right here. Well, I don't know if I just got scared by those enemies. I just kind of didn't know how to deal with them at first, and it took me a little bit to adjust, because they are a little bit different than most enemies. And I also was trying to like look at them and do all that other stuff, but I shouldn't have had that much trouble. However, I do die here a couple times, but it gets better, and then after that, I don't really die at all. And then a lot of this episode, you're going to see me kind of like swinging my head around, like I'm just looking everywhere at different stuff. But I think one of the first things, the minute that gate opened up and I walked in, one of the first things I noticed, like right off the bat, was that the statues here are not creepy or as creepy as the ones in Yarnum. Now, you remember in Yarnum, like, they're either all hooded or they're deformed, or there's something like chained up around them, and in old Yarnum there's some scary stuff. But here, they're all very human, or somewhat human. I don't even, you know, human-esque, if anything. You don't really know if everything's human anymore in this game, especially once you do the Chalice dungeons. They could be Thumerian, I don't know. But they look human, right? They look normal. How about that? Let's just say it that way. They look very normal. And that was like the first thing I noticed. I was like, wow, these statues are very just normal. However, they're still of abundance. Like, there's just like everywhere. So that kind of tells me that this isn't necessarily like we jumped out of the dream and we're actually in the real world right now. That this place is still somewhat of a dream area. And maybe this whole thing is one big dream. And of who or what, maybe of the moon presence. Maybe it's a dream of the moon presence, and he doesn't like all these assholes in his dreams. So that's why he has you out here hunting them. Maybe that's like the simplest way of putting it without going too far in depth. Maybe that's the whole idea behind it. He's like, why are these assholes in my dream? Let's just take care of that, and he gets you to do it and ruins the world around him. Who knows? But very normal statues, right? And there's four. There's no more than 4 different statues in this whole area. If you count one of them as one statue, which I do. So you got the king, you got a queen statue, you got a statue that could either be the queen at a younger age or a princess, and she's holding a baby. That's the one I consider like one statue. She's holding like a child and a baby in her arms. And then you got a nude statue of a woman. That's it. Those are the only 4 I believe you see through this whole area. And they're either all standing, crumpled, falling over. And there's a couple rooms where I kind of look at that a little bit more. It could be maybe looking at it too much sometimes, but it's just interesting to see it because it's really the only place that I've noticed. You know, I noticed some that right here, right now, like I'm watching it, that there's some that are knocked over. But in this area, there's 2 distinct things about 2 statues on the floor. And it's very apparent the minute you walk in if you're really looking for it. Also, there's some other stuff as we go through we're going to look at and talk about. The other thing is this is a very wintry, cold, seems almost, you know, desolate. There's nothing here really, but there's nothing really anywhere technically. Yharnam seemed populated, but the population was a bunch of like crazy guys. However, here it's just like there's these monsters, and then it's just nothing but just ice and snow. What's weird to me about that is in a minute we're going to look kind of out towards Yharnam, and we're really not that far away from Yharnam. So this area is like just doused with all this snow and ice, and then like literally what looks to not be, I don't know, I can't say like miles or anything like that, but not that far, right? It's not very far. It's like not past the horizon. How about that? You can see Yharnam, and Yharnam's not snowy or cold looking at all. Like so it's just very interesting that this place is like that, which also kind of hints that you're still part of a dream. Maybe something of someone's dream that wants to be forgotten or frozen in time or memory or something. Maybe something like along the lines of that. Maybe that's what it's trying to go for. However, you know, there's nothing that really states that or shows that. Just something you might get from just looking around. And that, I mean, that's just maybe something to think about as we go through here is why is it snowy? Why is it wintry? What's the whole point behind that? Because that's distinctively something different. It's not like, oh, everywhere else it's cold, but here it's snowy. No, there's nowhere else that's cold that I know of in this game. This is the only place that has that. And you're not that far from anywhere else in any part of this game. So it's just very interesting that it's so different, so drastically different. So that's why I think that it means something, right? When you have something like that drastically different, there's a reason behind it. Whether you're going to know that reason or not, you might have to figure out or use some intuition. But there's got to be a reason for it. And as we go through this, let's see if we can figure that out. I don't know if I actually had ever come up with an answer for that. But we'll, you know, maybe you guys can come up with something. As you can see, this is the shortcut. I realized, I'm like, oh, that's a shortcut. And I kind of was wandering around. This very starting area is very big. Even though there's 2 options. There's actually only one option. It's going to go through the door, but it's very big in what it has and kind of the different paths. Those worms are assholes. I still hate those things. Hate those things with a passion. I think, did I kill the big fat one already? Yeah. No, I haven't. So as you notice, you got these ones right here that don't have a very big stomach. Looks like they haven't been getting a lot of blood, but that one in the back right there, that thing is bloated. It's bloated with blood, and it's crazy looking. And again, look at the area that is bloated in. Would you say that's the stomach, or would you say that's a different area? I think Silent Hill is one of the best games that does this, where you're fighting these enemies and you're not really thinking about what the enemies symbolize, but they do symbolize stuff. Go play like Silent Hill 2 again, and then go look at the enemies, and then try to read what the story is about, you know, and then be like, oh my god, that's gruesome. So do something like that, and then kind of see, kind of like this area, like what area of the body, you know, is that its stomach? It doesn't look, I mean, it could be its stomach. It looks lower than the stomach to me, right? Kind of like the uterus area. So is that trying to show something, right? I don't know. Am I looking at that too much? Am I even right? But it does look like that, right? You got these long-haired creatures that have blood in one certain part of their body. It's not really filling up anywhere else. Just very interesting kind of symbolism there about kind of the whole game and everything that's going on with the babies and stuff like that. And also I think that's kind of what the nude statue is symbolizing, because if you sculptures of nude women in history, in our history, in the real world history, is usually to symbolize like the strength of a woman, or the, you know, the nurturing and the care that women can have. It's always like a full body figured woman, right? And especially in the older sculptures, which I don't know if there's a lot of new sculpture. I mean, there are obviously new sculptures, but you know, the famous ones, you know, these are full body women to show like their nourishment and their care for humanity and all that great stuff, right? So that's kind of what I think it's doing in this game too, is to show that women are important, right? There's women are very important to society in this game. However, yeah, bad things can happen too with that, and especially with the great ones. So it kind of seems like babies and women are super important in this world, and it has to do with how the great ones maybe nurture or become to maybe procreate, or maybe to advance, or maybe if they get too old they need a new body, so that's what they do. Who knows what the real reasoning behind what they want is, because we really don't know too much about what they think, right? I haven't found an item, and I don't know of an item where it actually goes, this is what the great ones are thinking and this is what they plan. We really don't know them, right? We just know of them. And in fact, we've met Amygdala, and we've met Rom, and let's see, I'm trying to think of any other ones. I've talked about these guys' arms are hilarious. It looks very cartoony. Let me think. I'm trying to think of all the great ones we met. We know of Adon. We know of Adon, but he's a formless great one. We know of Moon Presence, which we're figuring is, that's the one I'm forgetting. It's the one I just fought, but the last episode is Murgo's wet nurse. We know of her. So right now, to me, I'm really leaning on the edge that every great one we've met, not saying the ones that have been talked about, but every great one we've met so far may have been a person before. However, the only one that I'm leaning that may not be true with is Amygdala. That's the only one where that's scary. When I said that, I was like, what? Is Amygdala. And I don't know. I just don't think that one for some reason is. But all the other ones seem. Rom was. We pretty much know that because it's Bergenworth. It said it was a Bergenworth scholar or Bergenworth spider. So that tells me that she was once human and transcended. Who do we got? Murgo's wet nurse. Now that one's interesting because we don't really know for sure if it was, but I mean, would truly a great one need a wet nurse? Like, to me, I was thinking about that. I was like, do they really need one? So to me, like, Murgo's wet nurse was maybe once human too, right? And turned into a great one also by a great one, or for whatever reason. But that's also a female character, right? Because a wet nurse would have to be female. So I'm starting to look at this and thinking more and more that a lot of the great ones are all female great ones, or they come from female, or the ones that want to transcend from humans to becoming a great one are all female. I haven't met a male one yet at all, so that's why it's very interesting. Now Adon, like I said, Adon is weird because we haven't met him. He's formless, first of all, or yeah, it says he. There's one ruin, or I think it's Oedon's Wraith or whatever. It says that his disciples or his servants or people that worship him, his worshippers, I think is what it says. It uses he. So that is one of the guy ones, but again, that could have been a real one. That he could actually be the one real great one out of the whole story, and the other ones are just transcended human beings to great ones. And so far, to me, it seemed like they've all been female, which is strange, right? Kind of makes you think about it. I don't know what the reasoning yet behind that is, other than that females can give birth. So that's the only other thing I can think of, and is the reasoning behind that. Maybe there's something else though to deal with that, or the reasoning why. But right now, that's all I can say. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to really think of what all, other than Amygdala, because I think Amygdala is actually an actual great one. He or she is not of someone that transcended to it. Just doesn't seem like it. There's nothing that really points to it, while all the other ones do have something that really points towards it being like that. Like I said, Murgos. The one reborn doesn't say that it's a great one, and at least in the achievements it doesn't. So to me, right now, that thing wasn't a great one. It looks more like it was the bodies of all the people that were murdering and sacrificing inside the unseen village, kind of used as something that maybe they were trying to experimenting and making like a man-made great one. But this is all really speculation. However, I think it is noticeable that most of the great ones you fight are women, and that they're transcended humans and not necessarily pure great ones. You know, pure as in the ones maybe found in the labyrinth or whatnot. And the only thing we can really come about to saying that we know what the great ones are trying to do is that they are trying to make more of themselves somehow or in some way, or they're being very benevolent for us. Remember, the moon rune says that they do listen, or in the nightmare they do listen to us and want to help us. I don't know. It's just it's a very strange thing. It's a very strange thing to think about and kind of bend your mind around. That's all I can say really about it right now, because I can't really think of anything else. And if something else comes up that throws that off, then yeah, it would be awesome. But for right now, that kind of seems to be the case. The reasoning's unknown. Like I said, the great ones, we don't really know what they're thinking, what they're doing, what their whole point is. Did I already look at the gun? I don't think I picked it up yet. There's a gun over here. Let me see. I run up here and I notice, I think, the chest. I'm checking out the statues here, I believe, too. Again, there's that statue of, could be a queen. It has a crown, or it could be a princess, and that's where I noticed. I was like, oh shit, a tress. I forgot. So I'm gonna pick this up, and then we're gonna talk about this item for a bit. It's a pretty cool weapon. It's not, I don't think, great in any aspect, other than that you can switch it to guns, and then you can have dual pistols. It's pretty interesting. I think I don't do it in this episode. I do it on my next episode. I've already played through the next part. So this is a weapon wielded by the Knights of Cainhurst. Combines an elegant knight's sword with a peculiar firearm wielded by the Cainhurst Order. The old nobles, longtime imbibers of blood, are no strangers to the sanguine plague, and the disposal of beasts was a discreet task left to their servants, or knights, as they were called for the sake of appearances. Interesting. Interesting. There is some stuff to talk about here. So I really don't know how to say that, but Reiterpox, I guess is how to say it. It is a German, at least part German wording. I think Reiter is, and then I think Pox is like Hungarian, and it is an actual. I don't know, it might be an actual weapon. We also picked up the noble dress upstairs in that room. It's a finely tailored Bordeaux dress worn by the nobles of the old bloodline that traces back to the Forsaken Castle Cainhurst. So that's an interesting dress, because it looks like something we've seen on a character we've already visited that has a blood that is forbidden. And we'll talk about that in a second. We'll first talk about this weapon. It basically stands for cavalry saber. Saber is a combination, of German and a Hungarian word, meaning I think horse or cavalry or ride, and then the other word being saber. So then it looks like that. It looks, actually, if you go look it up, the sword part of it looks like that. However, the original weapon in our world didn't have a gun attached to it, and so that's something from this game, obviously. But it lets you, when you trick it out, it lets you use a gun in your right hand and a gun in your left hand. It's just kind of a cool style effect. So I don't know, maybe something useful for people who want to use Blood Tinge. But I think there's two other. I think the dual shot pistol, and then the the pistol I think you can get from a badge you get from here. I forget the name of it. It's like a rifle or something. It's a very decent blood tinge weapon. A lot of people use it also for a blood tinge build. So those things I think are probably better than that sword, but I think that sword maybe offers a little versatility, as in that you don't only strictly left to range. You can actually switch it and use a sword. Do I think the other, yeah. But then again, if you're making a blood tinge, what the hell does that matter? So I don't know. It's probably not the greatest of weapons, but it is cool in its aspect. So the things on that sword that are very interesting is it talks about these old nobles, long-time imbibers of blood. Imbiber, I think we talked about this already, is blood. They're drinking or absorbing the blood. They're long-time absorbers of blood, drinking blood, and that they're old nobles are old. They're not necessarily either young or new. Either way, you can take that. They call their plague the Sanguine Plague, so that's also very interesting. While Yharnam is calling their plague the plague of beasts, these places calling it the Sanguine Plague. Is it synonymous? Is it the same thing? Is Cainhurst super old and they call it something different because they're just that old, or are these two places in the same amount at the same time? They talk about how they fight the church, right? So it's very interesting to see that it is around the same time, but could Cainhurst be even older than Yharnam? So I'm checking these pictures out. A lot of them are pictures of the statues. Some of them aren't. Some of them are very very awkward. This picture up here, for a second I was like, no way, but then I don't think it's true. If you look at her amulet, it just, to me, it caught my eye real fast because it looked like the amulet the doll was wearing, but then I was like, no, that can't be. I was trying to like make shit up to make it match, but it does look very similar. But you'll see later, I look at the doll one just like to double check, and I was like, I don't think so. But you know, you never know. Maybe it's maybe the painter was horrible and didn't know how to draw jewelry. And I'm right. No, I'm playing. And then over here to the... What's interesting about these pictures, there's a bunch of portraits, right? For all we know, they're just like literally telling us the story, and we have no idea of what's going on because we don't know the name of any of these guys. Who knows? One of these is probably Gurman, and we don't even freaking know because we don't know anything about that guy. So, and what's interesting is this painting on the right. It's just like lit. Look how lit that painting is. It's just all the other paintings are dark. You don't really notice them. They're nice and cool looking, but then this one painting over here on the right is just like lit up. And it's this old guy in what looks to be like real armor. Very just interesting, but I have no idea who that is. Like, zero idea. So it's like it's showing something off to you, and you're just like, I have no idea. Game, thanks, I guess. But then again, it could just be lighting issue. Who knows? Maybe it's nothing. So back to that awesome gun we have. So yeah, that gun, that I don't know how to say the RP, we're gonna call it that because I don't know how to speak that language that it made the gun become. And we talked about the Sanguine Plague, right? And then another thing it says is dispose of beasts was a discreet task left to their servants, knights as they were called, for the sake of appearances. So the old noble guys didn't destroy these beasts. They were like, that's too high, that's too low for me to deal with. Let my servants do it. And they did it discreetly. So maybe to show of significance that, you know, again, something quietly that wants to be hidden. That their bloodline even leads to beasts, and that ultimately that they need to get rid of these. And then they called them servants. Well, they were servants, but they called them knights, so that just for the sake of appearances, so that they don't, I guess the way to look at it is that these old nobles aren't being saved by their servants, so they were like, well, you're not going to be called servants anymore. You're going to be called knights because we don't want to be, we don't look like we're being saved by our servants. So that's kind of the way I take that, and it's just it's very interesting kind of how their culture is, how different it is than Yharnam. But there are a lot of things that are similar. For instance, Yharnam and Cainhurst, right? They're both kind of like cities or places where people flourished. Old nobles are kind of like the citizens of Yharnam, or you could say even the church people of Yharnam, and because they didn't really deal with the huntings, but they were there. And then the knights are the hunters, right? The knights and hunters are very similar in the aspects that they both slaughtered or killed beasts, because that's what the blood would turn them into. And then you have the sanguine plague, is the plague of beasts. So it seems like these two places were synonymously the same thing, right? It's just one has a different culture or aspect while the other ones didn't. Right now I'm staring at this like statue of what looks to be like perfectly placed as like a family. So you have like the king, and then you have the mom, and then what I think is a daughter with her son, right? But what you don't see is the father. And who's the father of the daughter, right? And who's the husband of the daughter, I should say, and of the father of that little kid. How come he doesn't have a statue? Where's his statue at? Who is he? Is that something of importance? Are we saying that she is birthed of a great one? What is the point of this? Like, why are they doing this? In the way of this game, you would say that in like real world terms, you would be like, he was either maybe killed or someone that was disgraced, maybe not part of the family or something like that. But it's just very weird. She has this child in her hand, and there's no father figure, and it's like, what's going on? What's the reasoning behind that? Why did she birth a baby into the world that didn't have a father? What's going on with that? Just very strange that thing is missing in there. There's that statue doesn't exist. Again, maybe looking at it too much, but it's just something to think about as we go. And I'm kind of getting a vision of my landscape, where I've been, where I might be going, kind of what's going on. Just kind of get a feel of where I'm at. Helps out a lot when you're running around these new areas. So that, like, down there was where I was at, so I kind of understand where I'm going and what's going on. And here in a minute, I kind of look out into the background to view kind of the stuff going on back there. You can see Yarnum from here, and then you can see Hemwick Charnel. And then I don't know if that's the Charnel house right there, or you'll see in a minute. I look over there, not the island, but there's a lit building right there, and then there's Yarnum to the left. But this lit building, if you look to the left of it, there's, in the very dark area right there, you see kind of a top of a building. That, to me, was Hemwick Charnel Lane. So is that lit building right next to it the Charnel house? It could be. No, I don't see any reason why not. But it just looked different to me. And then you can see, obviously, the cathedral ward and Yarnum over there to the left. Kind of see how they're a little bit separated from each other too, which is interesting. And then you see this big bridge that looks like it used to connect to Charnel Lane. Maybe Charnel used to be a village that kind of was a crossroads of these two cities, and maybe other ones that we haven't seen or heard about, but used to be the crossroads, because remember, Hemwick Crossroads is what was called on the summons. So it's interesting kind of see how the world was built and exactly what was going on. We do know that at some point or another, the church and the Vilebloods disliked each other for some reason or whatever, and they started basically hunting each other down. Or for right now, that's what it seems. We kind of get into it a little bit more as we go on, but for right now, it seems like that's what was happening, and it's very crazy. So as I walk in this room, like I said, the first thing I notice is there's these statues on the ground, and the king's head is... Oh wait, no, that's the queen. The queen's head is cut. Oh man, wow, that is the queen. So you see it in this room, and then you go into another room, and you see it in the other room as well. And then all you have is and then you see the daughter, I guess, or whatever you want to call her, young queen. I don't know what really... I'm guessing right now daughter, because she has a different crown altogether. So daughter and her son are on the ground also. I don't know. Just very strange that they have a room that's all that there is, instead of just like, why put that there and for any reason other than to kind of show something, to tell maybe a story that's there, but you really don't know any of the details of that story. It's very interesting, because in a minute you go into the next area and it's the same thing. It's the same idea. Again, could be using resources over just a game thing, but it's just something interesting to see. Why not? Why not make random statues or whatnot? There's like specific kind of reason behind it. And then you got that picture of that guy. I don't know. There's like a story going on, and we don't know what it is, or I'm not smart enough to figure out something along the lines of that. But it's just a very interesting kind of tale being woven, and we have no idea what's going on. Let's see. So the noble dress that we picked up, we've seen it before. It looked different, and it was a different color. Well, it didn't look different. It was a different color, but it was on Ariana, the pleasure woman of the ward. She wore the same dress, and remember, if her blood said that she had a forbidden blood of a secret scent that was once forbidden. And I think it's interesting to note that at once it was forbidden, but does that, I guess it's not anymore? If I remember right, that's what it said. And I could be wrong. Maybe it didn't say at once was forbidden, but it was forbidden. I remember that. And so Ariane seems to be from Cainhurst, or originally from Cainhurst, and maybe kind of just hiding her way inside the church or inside Yharnam. Maybe she's a spy. That wouldn't be unreasonable for a woman of pleasure to be a spy. That's not unlikely. And she seems to survive very well. She seems to be alive right now. However, she doesn't have any, you don't see her like fight or anything. So who knows really what she is. She could just be hiding. And that seems to be a very, how would I say it? Like soft answer, or a very a very easy answer to go to. And there's nothing wrong with that answer, right? She's hiding. Whether she's a spy or not, she's hiding inside Yharnam, right? It doesn't matter what you think of that. There's really nothing that says she is a spy or whatever. It wouldn't be like I said, though, very far-fetched for that to be true. But she seems to be of Cainhurst origins. Now, she has this old blood in her, like, how? Where she get it from? Was she originally from Cainhurst and she just kind of lives in Yharnam now? That also kind of entails that both these places existed at the same time. That they still exist at the same time at the point of this game, and that kind of throws things off loop for me, because in a minute you're going to hear something the Queen says, and it's very interesting because that would mean something about Ariana, and something that's just weird, and you'll hear what it is in a minute. I find the executioner garb. This is attire worn by the band of executioners commanded by Martyr Logarius. Later became the basis for all church attire, with its heavy draping of a holy shawl. At the great Logarius once said, "Acts of goodness are not always wise, and acts of evil are not always foolish. But regardless, we shall always strive to be good." Such a weird saying. But just keep in mind that Ariana, and then this one, the gloves say that it has brass rivets, are unique to the executioners and reflect their adoration for hand-to-hand combat. Weird that they want to fight. They don't have weapons, which is awkward. Maybe to show that they existed before the hunters, and they were kind of like, they were fighters, and they kind of did the same thing, but they were even before the hunters. Just interesting to kind of see that. However, back to the noble dress in Ariana, it's just, it's interesting because if she is a vile blood, is there a difference between coming from Cainhurst and being a vile blood? Is there a difference? Like, could you live in Cainhurst and not be a vile blood? Is that possible? It could be, right? There's nothing saying that you could live in Yharnam and not have the blood inside you, but more than likely you do. But there's nothing that says that it can't happen. Like, you could just be living there, and it just sucks for you because now all this crazy shit's going on, and you don't have any of that blood. But I guess you'd be kind of safe. But it seems like it would be very highly unlikely for that to be true, right? And that might be true for Cainhurst too. But I'm saying that because, like I said, in a minute you're going to see, again, you see the Queen's head on the ground, chopped off. Just saying. But again, you see something the Queen says later, and we'll talk about it kind of when we get closer to it. But it kind of throws off what Ariana really is. And is it because the Queen doesn't know about her? If that's true, then she's definitely not a spy, because she's going to be spying for her if she didn't know about her. Doesn't make any sense. Or so is she really hiding? And is Ariana doing a really good job of hiding? It seems like the Queen would know she would exist, though, even if she was hiding very well. I don't know. But there's some like discrepancy, I guess. There's something weird going on with that. This is me looking at her pendant now, and I was like, oh, it's not. To me, it's not the same because her jewel on it is a lot bigger than the one in the picture. And then it kind of has a different surrounding to it. However, it was kind of cool to kind of check for those things, look for them. But it'd been really weird to see that that's their connection. That'd throw everything in a fucking loop. I would be like lost. Then after that, I'd be like, I don't know what's going on, guys. This series is over. I don't get it. I don't know what's going on anymore. So, like I said, Cainhurst and Yharnam seem to exist kind of in the same time frame. Whether Cainhurst existed before Yharnam, that you could state that might be true. But Yharnam and Cainhurst at one time existed at the same time, because you had these executioners after these vile bloods, and it seems the executioners may have even existed before the church, because the church acquired their attire. So either at the very, very beginnings of the church, or even before they existed, they had these executioners that were out hunting these vile blood for whatever reason. We still really don't know that reason, other than that they're vile blood. And it starts as we go further and further into this mystery that these executioners seem to be very not as holy as they appear. They seem to be very crazy in themselves. You'll see what I'm talking about in a minute as we get to it. But the church saw something as blasphemous, or I want to say, I guess you could say the church at the time. Like I said, I don't know if you could say the executioner exists during the church, but the church says that they took the executioner said the church took their attire. So that kind of tells me that the executioners existed a little bit before the church, or around the beginnings of the church and whatnot. So something happened where they thought these vile bloods were blasphemous for some reason or another. Maybe just to find something to put their anger on for the blood inside them, turning them into beasts. Who knows? That's all speculation, but that seems to exist. Those, like, I put down here, stupid gargoyle enemies. Yeah, those gargoyle enemies can scare the shit out of you. They scare the shit out of me. That first one did. Anyways, we talked about how all the whole landscape and all that. It's good stuff. And then now, let's talk a little, I guess, about the executioner garb. It says Logarius is a martyr, and a martyr is someone who's killed for their beliefs, right? Whatever those beliefs are, if you're killed for them, you're a martyr. Good or bad, you're still a martyr. And usually means that people use you as maybe of a symbol for them believing in the same thing as you did. And Logarius was that. And I was talking about how the set becomes the basis of all church attire. So the hunt for the vile bloods maybe is, if you look at it that way, it ultimately led to the development of the church attire. So hunting the vile bloods led to the church getting their cool uniforms, and it really was talking about not necessarily the same design or anything, but more of the shawl that you get on each one. If you see when you wear them, they all have like a shawl on the back. So if that's true, that means the church saw Logarius as kind of a hero, or maybe even like a saint in some way, and they're honoring him by making his group's uniform their kind of like set. Like, this is what we want to wear, because we kind of saw it in him as him kind of being someone we want to look up to, or maybe, like I said, a saint. So really, like, what is the reason behind hunting the vile bloods? Was it something they did to the church at first? Like, that's really the question here, is why are they hunting each other? What is this war that is going on? What is the reasoning behind it? And you really don't know. Not yet, anyways. You do get to hear kind of a side of a story when you get to the queen, but you really don't know what that is as of right now. And it's just really questioning. And you see these ghost ladies. They don't seem to be fighters. They seem to be... I can't tell if their hands look like they're binded, but I'm not sure. And it looks like they picked up a knife to attack someone. That kind of seems to be the imagery of who they are. And then you see one of them has a head that uses to yell. And it's just a very, like I said, they don't seem to be warriors. They seem to be like trying to defend themselves from something that happened over here in Cainhurst. And this place is called Forsaken. It's a Forsaken Castle. And it's just it's abandoned and deserted, right? Abandoned and deserted to me means that people left it or ran away, and not necessarily were murdered there, but it could be, that they were all killed here, and that's why these apparitions still exist and whatnot. And these fighters weren't able to defend themselves, and they were tied up, and it looks more like a massacre or genocide more than it does look like like something of like more of a war. Looks more like this was very one-sided, and that could be because of what Ligarius did, and with his little band of executioners, they may have came over here and just like slaughtered everyone, and kind of just won the war. And maybe that's why the church looks up to him and thinks of him. Wow, you did a great thing for us. You got rid of these vile bloods. Again, though, why? Why get rid of them? What's the reasoning behind it? Is it because it's one great one versus another's great one's blood? Or do they both have the same blood and they're just idiots fighting each other? Like, what is the reasoning? And it's very, very weird to try to figure out this out, because it's not given to you, that's for sure. And I honestly will say I don't know the answer. Now, if you remember, the Gauntlets had a little saying in it saying that it was hand-to-hand. They liked using hand-to-hand combat, which is really weird, because that means, did they attack this area with like martial arts? Like, how did they win this war? Because it looks like Cainhurst wasn't unarmed. I mean, they had to have knights and stuff that obviously had weapons. You pick one up, right? And then there's some other ones you get when you buy the badge. How did they let unarmed people beat them? You know, like, what's the reasoning behind that? And then here in a minute, you pick up another item that may explain that. And maybe they weren't really hand-to-hand combatants as much as they were mages with the ability to summon things. And then you start kind of seeing a darker side of one side, and then maybe this other side isn't as bad as this game's been calling them, even though they're called Vile Blood and all this other stuff. They're given this dirty name, but in reality, maybe they weren't evil. It was the people attacking them that were evil. And it all boils back down to the church. The church is, like, really, this game is making the healing church look like assholes. And so far, you know, we've known them, if the Unseen Village is part of them, they've been kidnapping people, they've been experimenting on people, they've been destroying people, they've destroyed the lives of their own city that they're built in, and now apparently they wiped out a whole castle full of people that, who knows what the reasoning is as of right now. For right now, I'm just going to say for no reason, other than that they wanted to, or they saw something evil about them. The Healing Church ain't got a great name to them right now, so could explain why you're fighting these guys, and that's kind of the point of the story so far, right? And then it leads even further and deeper than just that basic storyline of beast versus man. It starts getting into, oh shit, there's other stuff, there's an other world. They're trying to get this higher knowledge, and that they're even further beyond what we originally thought of them as evil, like basic evil, where they're doing some shit, and then you got like, oh shit, they're doing some shit. We need to stop them. So maybe that's the whole reasoning behind the moon presence, and why he's quote unquote hired you to go do, is to stop all this madness from going on. And it seems like every so often this madness keeps reappearing, and it's been kind of like you kind of killed it off and then it comes back, and you kind of kill it off and it comes back. In very great ways. Like, you have Old Yarnum, like what happened there. We had that note that said this moon hung low, and then Old Yarnum went ape shit. So that's kind of like one of, I'm not gonna say the first one, but that is one of the times when something needed to be done. So who was the hired hunter at that time to fix that problem, right? What happened, or was it so bad that people were trying to figure out a way by using the Great Ones to fix it? You don't know. That's all, like I said, a lot of speculation. But we do know that something bad happened in Old Yarnum, and it had to do with the moon. Now, is it that the moon hanging low and all this bad stuff happening just a coincidence that happens, right? Is it necessary that the moon is the one bringing it, or is the moon trying to like protect them when it knows bad things are about? I don't know. Maybe the moon is directly related. If so, then why are we working for it? As of right now, it seems like we're working for it. So there's a lot of things that like tie in there that we don't really know 100% of what like is the real reasoning behind it. The tiles right here, I don't know why they're yellow. I don't get it. I don't know if there's a reasoning behind that or whatnot. It's just very weird. And then you actually see one near the boss fight here with Ligarius, and it just looks like he like just went to the bathroom under his chair. But you see the tiles here also, which is just, I don't know if it's just a mistake or if they're trying to show something or whatnot. So, you know, But this is things to, like, again, think about as we play. And here in a minute, like I said, we find a treasure, and it's in. No, it's not in that room. It's in the room I just passed back there. But there's I was gonna say souls over here, but there's some blood over here that you can pick up, and you kind of get ambushed. But it's a really dumb ambush because the enemy that ambushes you is facing the wrong way, so it doesn't really work from Zoft if you don't have them facing. I think that's just lit up because Yharnam is actually supposed to be there. It's just the game didn't put it there yet, but I'm not sure if that's that same spot or not. But it is brightly lit right there. It may not be. My directions may be off, but I think that's kind of looks like the same area where that. You're like, see, it's backwards. It's stupid. I don't know if it's because you're not supposed to recognize that's gonna happen and you're supposed to freak out or whatnot. I can see people like rolling off because they flip their shit. But the other thing I'm looking for, I was really looking for Bergenworth, but you can't. I don't think we're on the opposite side of where it's at. I think it's, if you notice, the lake or the river or wherever you're at kind of goes around the opposite side of the place, and I think it's somewhere back there is where it's at, and not on the side we're on. However, I can be wrong, and I just didn't see it. But yeah, going back to, so we're gonna see that one thing is this library. It's very interesting. There's a huge, very, very, very big library. Not like a small little library that we've seen over in Yharnam. Like this place has got a massive library full of books. So these guys were definitely into some kind of knowledge or studying or learning something that they wanted to try to figure something out. So that's kind of what I think about why they have so many books. Or it's to show that they've collected books throughout the ages and that they are very, very old, like race, and that they've been collecting these books and history and stories throughout a very, very long period of time, because this place is massively full of books. I think that's a weird blood gem, because the gemstones are supposed to be cold blood, and then it says it's a warm version of a cold blood. If you look at the description, it says blood gems are especially rare bloodstones that grow on cold blood, and then it's a warm cold blood gem. It's just, I looked at it, I think, like twice here, and I'm like, wait a minute. I had to like think about it, and I was like, oh, whatever. It doesn't really talk about anything or whatnot. So here in a minute, I go back down to that area I was just at. I should have done it backwards. I should have went in that room first and got the gloves and then popped back out and then did the second part, but I did it kind of backwards. So if you're running through this area, do it the opposite way I do it. Go down, when you go drop down there, go into the room where we find what we call the executioner's gloves, and then pop back out and then go the way I did to get back up here. And that will be a lot faster, because the way I did it was the longer way, because I got to go back down there now and check out that room I didn't find, or I didn't see anything, or that room I didn't go in. It's not that I didn't see anything, I just didn't go into it. And we find what we see is a pair of executioner gloves. And it has a very cool description. We'll read it when we get there. But to talk about it a little bit, it says that it's a gloves of an executioner from somewhere far. So whoever glove this is, they're from a very far away place. And the other interesting thing is that this is a special treasure of Cainhurst. Right, so this is a special treasure of Cainhurst. So necessarily doesn't mean it's from Cainhurst, or that it's their thing, right? It would say like this is an item from Cainhurst, or this is kind of like they say these items are from the church workshop. So just this is a treasure. You can find treasure anywhere, so it doesn't necessarily mean it's theirs, but it's from a faraway land, and that's interesting. Okay, so this is from somewhere far away. Could Yharnam be considered far away? I don't necessarily think so. If you look out the window, you can see it. That to me isn't very far away enough for me. But so this is somewhere from farther than that, maybe. And then it says that it summons spirits by applying blood to the gauntlet, which is that's not necessarily how do you say this, nice magic. If you could say there's nice magic, like that's not necessarily like let's think of like Dragon Age, how blood magic is like forbidden, right? That's kind of what I kind of get it just at it. Now that's that could be an opinion, right? Maybe blood magic isn't, but to me, if you're using blood to summon something or to do something, that seems to me that's not the way it should be done. And here's the little ladies with the heads cut off that scream at you. And the scream stuns you, so just be careful. So yeah, they have a very what is it? Faraway land, bad magic, voodoo stuff equipped to it, really, right? Kind of gives you that vibe. And then it says nobles enjoyed the amusement, basically, from this glove, that they enjoyed the spirits that were summoned. That's very weird. Now it says nobles. The only nobles we've been talking about really so far is from Cainhurst. So I'm gonna assume that we're talking about Cainhurst nobles thought it was fun. These gloves were a fun amusement to use, you know. Now the thing is where did they get it, right? Who had it? Well, I'll tell you in about 2 seconds when we fight that boss who had this glove. And because when you fight him, you notice that he uses pretty much the same magic that this glove gives off. So we got the Executioner glove, and then I'm going to look at the information right here. We're going to read it real quick and then talk about it just a little bit more, because it does have some it kind of helps talk about Ligarius maybe a little bit more and who he was. Apparently, I don't know how to open up the info. I've been going into this a million times. I don't know. One of the secret treasures hidden in Cainhurst, the gloves of an executioner from a faraway land, passed from executioner father to executioner son. These gloves can be used to summon wrathful spirits of the past by smearing them with blood. It is said that the nobles found immeasurable delight in the dances of these vengeful specters. Huh. Interesting, right? Okay, so it says smear blood on it, but it doesn't say you have to smear your own blood. So that's one thing to think about, right? And if you're an executioner, you may be smearing other people's blood. That might be where the spirits come from, or why there are spirits there that are vengeful. Just a very interesting weapon, because what ends up happening is here in a minute you fight Ligarius, and he kind of uses the same magic that thing casts. And it starts making you think, okay, who is Ligarius, and what is he really trying to do? He seems to be creepier and creepier as we go further and further into his little storyline. We pick up the Knight's garb, and it says, the Cainhurst way is a mix of nostalgia and bombast. They take great pride even in blood-stained corpses of beasts that they leave behind, confident that they will stand examples of decadent art. This is the attire of the Knights of Cainhurst. So remember, the Knights of Cainhurst were actually their servants, and when you look at it, they have actually super decent looking clothes, but it is gold latticed instead of it's like gold work, but not, I don't know, that means it's not necessarily gold, so it's kind of to make them look fancy, but not necessarily that they are fancy, because they were just servants that did the bidding of their nobles by killing off beasts. But I do, however, really like the way the set looks. I think it makes you look badass. It makes you look like a badass, like a rich pirate, a rich sea pirate or something like that. I don't know. I think it looks cool, and I wear it probably pretty much for the rest of this game. I believe I'm gonna wear it. There is the Cainhurst armor, and there's a lot of badges we're gonna get in these, I think, next 2 episodes, and we'll talk about the lore from the stuff that unlocks in the store on the probably my last episode before I end the game. We'll kind of go over all the new stuff that we find and talk about that. But yeah, talking about these executioner gloves, they're definitely bring light to who Ligarius may have really been, because it seems like he may have been kind of summoner, sorcerer, maybe even. Explains why maybe he was hand to hand, even though when you fight him he doesn't use his hands very often. Just very unique character, and you start realizing maybe more and more that he's considered this martyr and stuff, but not necessarily a good guy. And then we kind of go back to his little saying, his little wonderful saying: acts of goodness are not always wise, and acts of evil are not always foolish, but regardless we shall always strive to be good. I read that in like a very old, in my mind I read it as like an old person saying shit that you're just like, I can't believe you said that. You sound old and scary, and you should like some kind of wizard that it just needs to die because you're freaking nuts. That's the way I read it, because and it's funny because the church kind of follows his exact saying to the T, right? So he says, so the first thing he says is that acts of goodness are not always wise, right? So blood healing, right? Blood healing is an act of goodness technically, because you're trying to heal people of their problems, but it's not the smartest thing to do, because it ends up like definitely turning all your people into beasts and doing bad things to them. So and it kind of set the chain of events that occurred now. And then it says acts of evil are not always foolish. They're basically kidnapping and murdering and experimenting on people, much like Bergenworth. and that is an act of evil. But apparently the church doesn't think it's foolish, right? Because they're doing it for a reason, so they think it's not foolish. And then it says, but, you know, we always strive to be good. And the reasons why they're doing these things is because they believe that they are trying to be good people and that they're trying to fix people's problems, even though they are doing evil shit in the act. And this kind of all goes back as another way of saying the opposite of really this quote would be the means do not justify the end, right? The way you get to something, even though as good as it may be, if the way you get there is a dark way to do it, that's probably not a good way of doing it. Like, you need to figure out another way. Just like the church is like, yeah, let's look Garius. He's awesome. He's a saint. We'll just listen to everything he says and we'll do it the way he does it. And it kind of looks like it kind of leads them. It doesn't lead them, or, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean they took the advice or anything, but they can kind of justify what they've been doing by what he did or his little saying. And what good person would say something like that, right? I wouldn't follow anyone that says those words. So it's very interesting, the church and the heroes that they decide to pick as the people that they want to martyr and follow, and you know, and like I said, the reason why I think the church follows them is because they go, hey, he wore that cool shawl, let's do that same thing, and we'll make him awesome. And it seemed, and we can kind of go back to what Alfred was talking about, his master Ligarius, and how they seek the vile bloods, and remember they're the good blood, and that they're part of the church and whatnot. So we all know that that's there because Alfred said it. The other thing that's interesting is how far apart is Alfred and Master Ligarius? Like, is it like Master Ligarius and then Alfred's the next in line, or is it like Master Ligarius and like Alfred's a couple generations, you know, and he kind of read about Master Ligarius and what happened to him, and he's like, I want to finish that mission, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, I want to help him and help him out. So I don't remember there being any, I have to go look back on Alfred and what he was saying when you first meet him, and seeing if there was a direct connection between the two, or if they're kind of separated by generations, which could very well be. Interesting to see exactly how well connected they are, and how crazy, as we'll see in the next episode, how crazy Alfred really is. And right now we'll see how crazy Ligarius is too, because we kind of get a little bit more on his motives and stuff like that, and he's just a bundle of mysteries once you beat him here. So we're about to enter the boss fight with him, and it's right up along these steps. I'm kind of just looking around again because I'm pretty sure right now I feel it. I'm like, I know this is a boss fight, but I'm also looking at the architecture, because those little things on the fence remind me of an architecture we were just at. And if you, not that stuff I'm looking at right now, but the fence next to me, those like 4-leaf circle things on the sides, they remind me of many shapes that we've seen many times. If you really think about the circles on the ground, like at the church, you kind of see that kind of outline. You see it, I believe, also in the Nightmare of Mensis, when you go up to the part where you're about to fight Murgo's wet nurse. You see that symbol, I think, a couple times. You see the saint symbol on the side right there, that we're used to seeing actually in real life. You see that, I think, on the key, and it kind of has a different shape to it. It's just very interesting to see all these shapes in the same areas, very unnoticeable things. So here's a pretty cool intro to a guy who you really don't know too much about other than what Alfred said until you come here, and you kind of learn a little bit more about him and his band of merry men that he takes over. Key thing to look at is his cross on his neck right there, and then he has something else there, but to kind of show that this is more than likely Master Ligarius. I don't know exactly if that was a cross or not. It looked more like a cross, but it's hard to really say. But he was sitting here, seems like, for a very, very long time. And very much like the doorkeeper at Bergenworth. He's kind of decayed, but he's still able to do his mission. And right here, boom, right off the bat, this is some scary ghost summoning shit. And I think that's the move right there. When you use the gauntlets, that's the move you get. I have to actually look that up. I've never actually used the gauntlets, so I can be making that up. But I believe it is of the same type of magic, summoning those ghost faces. And it's strategy against this guy is, if you're at this point, if you kind of followed the way I played it, you should be a little bit overpowered against him. He can still kill you, there's no doubt about that, but when you hit him, you'll see how much damage I do here in a second. With a plus 10 weapon, I kind of take off a good chunk. At that moment, I was like, oh, I'm pretty strong against this guy. You want to kind of keep it close because his magic is super powerful, so try to stay as close as possible. He'll still use magic, but if you can stagger him out of it when he tries to cast, you can stagger. That move right there will explode in the spot near you, and so all you gotta do is dodge away from it. Like, so right there I could have dodged left and I wouldn't have got hit by it. And then just try to stick close to him and make sure he doesn't use his magic as much. He's basically human, so you can, I believe I do stun him here in a minute. That sword is very interesting. I don't know if it's anything we've seen or whatnot, but it looks cool. I wish I had it. It looks very, actually looks very like Dark Souls, Demon Soul kind of sword. Because it doesn't have any, there's no switch to it, there's no like trick to it. It's just like a straight up sword. His, however, scythe is very cool looking. I wish you could get that. That'd be cool. Or if like this would be a trick weapon all in one, that'd be awesome. I'd be probably super. I'd probably use it all the time, like right there. Looks like it's like attached, but it's not. But yeah, he's using like a very basic sword and scythe apparently. Remember, there was supposed to be well, his band of men loved hand-to-hand combat apparently. So maybe they're brawlers or something is what they're trying to say. Because right now it looks more like he's a mage. He reminds me very much of like Gandalf. You know how Gandalf running around with a sword and a staff at one point in the movies. And he has the ability to like cast magic, and he's also really good at using a sword apparently. Just something interesting that when I was fighting him, I was like, he kind of reminds me of that. Except that Gandalf was good. Ligarius, on the other hand, doesn't look so much like he had a reason behind what he was doing, and it wasn't necessarily a good reason. So when you kill him, he doesn't drop it where he dies, which I don't know why he doesn't drop it where he dies. He drops it over here for some reason on this pathway, and I guess maybe so you can see it better or you notice it. But you get a thing called the Crown of Illusions, and this is a Cainhurst crown, one of the precious secrets of Cainhurst. The old king's crown is said to reveal illusions and expose a mirage that hides a secret, and so Ligarius donned the crown of his own volition, determined to prevent a single soul from stumbling upon the vile secret. What visions did he see, sitting serenely upon his new throne? What was he doing? There's a lot of stuff there, and it kind of hints towards what he was doing, but it doesn't really blatantly tell you, which sucks, because I wish something, and sometimes this game would blatantly tell you stuff, but it doesn't. And so it's a crown of the old king, right? Who's the old king? Well, I'm guessing those are what the statues are. Well, by the way, if you walk over here, nothing happens, but when you equip the crown, you reveal a secret area, and that might be what the crown's talking about. So it's an old king. It's a crown of an old king. It reveals illusions, exposes mirages that hide secret. What illusions and what secrets, right? Could this crown let you see the truth, the eldritch truth, maybe too, or is it not that powerful? There's nothing that says it can't or can, but it kind of made me think about that for a minute, because it says it reveals illusions. Which, if this world is an illusion and the eldritch truth is of otherworldly knowledge, maybe it's able to kind of help you see that or realize it. But for right now, really what it looks like is that it reveals this area for the moment. So, and then Ligarius wore it of his own volitions. In other words, he wore it for his own choices and reasonings and whatnot. I mean, if you killed the king, or he found it, let's say, why did he choose to wear it? What was the reasoning behind him wanting to put it on? Here's what's interesting about this, is that he made it, he strove to, well, for what we know and what was told to us, is he strove to wanting to kill and wipe out the Vile Bloods. He makes it all the way up here to the Queen's, well, for all we know, he made it to the Queen's chamber. He got the crown, and then he was like, I'm not going to kill you. Instead, I'm going to sit on a chair outside here and block you from the rest of the world. Now, did he think that was the better option of either killing her and doing that? What is his reasoning behind that? Because to me, I would think that he would try to kill her, right, and get rid of the Vile Bloods. But something happens where that doesn't happen. And then you come up here and you reveal this area, and you got the queen now. And she says some interesting things. The first thing I want you to note is that us, we are all capitalized for some reason. Put emphasis on it is what I'm thinking. If it was like one time it was capitalized, I'd be like, it was probably a mistake. But every time, us, we, and are capitalized every time she talks, which is interesting. But yeah, so he dons his crown, and what is Ligarius trying to do? He doesn't seem like a good guy, is what I'm getting at. Doesn't seem like he's doing the right thing. And when you talk to the queen here, she kind of emphasizes that, and she seems to be very knowledgeable about who she is and what she is. And you'll see her say things like, are corrupted. She says corrupted blood, rotted blood, things like that. Like, that's what we are, but maybe she's just said it. She's been told it so much that that's what she believes now, or why does she call herself corrupted and rotted? Why? Like, does she know that that's the truth? Maybe they are corrupted and rotted. She's lived so long, she understands that. Like, why does she call herself that? But that to me shows like a good side of you, right? That you're able to see that in yourself, that you aren't necessarily maybe the good or the greatest thing, right? And that you admit to it sometimes is a sign of good. At least that's what it looks like. But then she says some other things that kind of make you wonder also. She talks about how the church are murdered. Like, she says we're murdered and we have to wear this mask of defiance. So, and we'll see that in a minute. She also doesn't look to be in great of health. She's very skinny. She kind of like leaning forward, like looks like she's breathing heavy. And then she's wearing this helmet that's covering her face. And more importantly, it looks like it's covering her. It looks like it's covering her eyes. Like, you can't see her eyes, so it's trying to cover that part of her up anyways. I should have, well, here in a minute I kind of get closer to it just to make sure. And then here she talks. So let's listen.
Visitor. Moon-scented hunter. I am Annalise, Queen of Castle Cainhurst. Ruler of the Vile Bloods, and sworn enemy of the Church. Yet our people are murdered, and we are prisoner to this wretched.
So this kind of was the more important part of what she says. She says I'm the ruler of the Vile Bloods, and we are the enemy. We are the sworn enemy of the Church. But she's like, yet we are the ones murdered, and we're the ones that have to wear this stupid mask. So it seems like she's saying that we're the sworn enemies of the church, but we're only sworn enemy of the church because the church wanted us to be their sworn enemies. For some reason, they're hunting us. And now, because of what the church is doing, we got to wear this mask. We're being murdered. Right, murdered, not hunted, not fighting or in a war. We're being murdered, like straight murdered. And it just kind of makes her seem like she's saying, we didn't really, we didn't want this. This was something brought upon us, and this is kind of where it leads to. But again, why did Ligarius stop here? What was the point of stopping right here and then hiding her? Why hide her away from the world? Is it because he knows that if she tries to kill her, it's not going to matter? Or is there some other reason that he find out some truth? And we don't really know that yet. And I don't know if there's something later that's going to show us or kind of maybe able to tie us into this. And then, like I said, she says of and are and we a lot. It's just very strange that she says that. It makes me want to say that we're of Cainhurst, right? And that we may not have been a Vile Blood, but may have been of Cainhurst originally. And we went to Yharnam. And we got blood. Maybe we were Vile Blood. We went to Yharnam to fix ourselves because we didn't want to be Vile Blood anymore. Yharnam, the guy gave us blood ministration. We got rid of it, and then we kind of came back here. And it's just weird. It's just she's a we and are, but like I said, there's a lot of emphasis. Maybe she's just trying to say. Maybe it's trying to make her prove her point more. There's a lot of reasonings behind it. She's just, like I said, very strange. I try to get a better look of her face and stuff, but it's interesting that she says that we have to wear this wretched mask. It makes me really think that whatever the church did, for some reason, people have to go around covering their face. For some reason, you don't have to, but that might be because you're of moon presence or you're moon scented, as she says. But for some reason, everybody else has to cover their eyes. Now, there's certain people who may have previously been moon scented. I'll say for right now, like Dejura and Eileen both talk about the doll, and or talking about dreaming once. So it's very possible that these people once were in the hunter's dream. And if you look at Dejura, he only has one eye covered, and Eileen has a mask on, so you don't really know if her eyes are covered or not. But more than likely, they're covered by, I guess, the mask. But there could be holes in the mask, and her eyes aren't covered. But it seems like whatever the church is doing is forcing people to have to cover their face or cover their eyes up. And it might have to do with the great ones and needing eyeballs. And for some reason, people that don't cover their eyes. Yeah, I was really trying to see if her eyes were covered. To me, it looks like it. Like that thing is down, and she even has something tied around it where the holes would be, just to make sure that they aren't seen. So that's something. And then, like I said, when you go through the town, all the people you fight don't have them covered, or their eyes are already gone. Just something to think about. All right, guys, I'll check you out later. There was a lot of stuff there, but definitely next episode we'll be going to the Upward Cathedral Ward. There'll be a ton of stuff to talk about there too, and then I'll be ending the game in the episode after that, and then hopefully I can put all this stuff together and maybe come up with something good. But I'll definitely check you guys out later. Thanks for watching again. Peace out, guys.